At my daughter's wedding, her groom shoved my face straight into the cake and laughed, saying, "Go ahead, try the dessert." I could feel my blood boiling as frosting slid down my chin, and the first thing that hit me was my diabetes. Before we go any further, if my story has found you, hit subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I want to see just how far my words can travel. Then, out of nowhere, one of the guests pointed at me and shouted, "He's a billionaire." The smirk instantly vanished from the groom's face, his skin turned pale, and I knew right then, he'd screwed up, and there was no way he'd get away with it. A few weeks earlier, we'd been at dinner with the Whitaker family, talking about wedding venues. I had been describing how beautiful outdoor ceremonies could be, mentioning a sweet little pavilion in a nearby park, simple, elegant. But before I could finish, Eldon Whitaker cut me off, his words sharp as glass. "We understand your financial limitations." The chandelier above us seemed to flicker, as if even the lights were embarrassed. Around us, other tables buzzed with chatter, but ours sank into a silence so heavy it felt like a judgment. Priscilla stopped mid-bite, Urban grinned behind his glass of wine, and my daughter Megan turned red as a rose. "Dad always makes things work with what we have," Megan rushed to say, her voice high, almost desperate. "He's always been resourceful." Eldon swirled the word on his tongue like it was an expensive vintage. Resourceful. That's one way to put it. The waiter slipped in silently, topping off our waters. I watched the glasses glimmer in the light and thought about how much this dinner must cost per minute. No prices on the menu, that's always a bad sign. I'd gone with salmon. Everyone else ordered aged steaks, the kind that probably cost more than most families spend on groceries in a week. "Don't stress about the wedding costs," Priscilla said, flashing a smile as sharp as her diamond earrings. "We completely understand your situation." The way she said my situation made it sound like poverty was some kind of disease. Urban leaned back, his tailored jacket pulling across his chest. "We've got connections with the best venues in the Hamptons, the Grand Pavilion, maybe. I doubt you've heard of it." He was right. I hadn't. 50 grand just to rent the place, he added, like he was talking about pocket change. "But don't worry about pitching in, Thomas. We'll handle it." The gift box in my pocket suddenly felt heavy. Inside was a Victorian silver locket I'd found at an estate sale. 2 little photo spaces inside. Gorgeous. Meaningful. And it had cost me $37. In this crowd, it might as well have been spare change at a luxury car lot. Megan reached for my arm and whispered, "Dad, you don't have to." But I did. "I always provide for my family." Eldon laughed under his breath. "Of course you do. In your own way." Then dessert arrived, massive plates holding chocolate creations decorated with gold leaf, more like museum pieces than food. I thought about my own kitchen table back home, scratched up from years of Megan's homework, the same table where we'd celebrated her college acceptance with a cake from the grocery store. "We're planning a bachelor party too," Urban bragged. "Private yacht. You're welcome to join, if you can get the time off work." I almost laughed. I hadn't asked anyone for time off in 15 years. Priscilla dabbed her lips with a napkin that probably cost more than my shirt. "Thomas, remind me, what exactly do you do again?" "Investment consulting," I said, keeping it simple. It was true, though not the whole story. "How nice," she replied. "Small accounts, I assume." When the check came in a leather folder, Eldon didn't even look. He just slid his black card inside, like it was nothing. The waiter gave me a grateful nod, the kind that hinted my tip was more than I could really afford, probably bigger than what I usually spent on groceries in a whole month. Outside, valet drivers pulled cars around. The Whitakers' shiny black Mercedes glowed under the streetlights like a hunter lying in wait. My old Toyota Camry looked like it had wandered into the wrong part of town. "See you soon," Eldon called from his open window. "We'll take care of the real planning." I helped Megan into the passenger seat. Her silence stretched between us, heavy, like a bridge neither of us knew how to cross. The highway opened up ahead, headlights sweeping across our faces every few seconds. Megan fiddled with her purse strap, the leather squeaking softly in the quiet. Finally, she broke the silence. That restaurant was beautiful. Those chandeliers must have cost a fortune. I tightened my grip on the wheel. Exit signs blurred past. 20 minutes until home. 20 minutes to decide whether I'd let tonight's humiliation stand, or whether I'd fight back. "Megan," I said, my voice coming out rougher than I meant. "We need to talk about Brandon." Her shoulders shifted. What about him? The way he talked tonight. And the way his family treated. Treated what? Treated who? Treated you. She turned toward me, defensive. "Dad, they're just used to money. They don't mean anything by it." A semi roared past us, its headlights flooding the car for a split second. And in that light, I saw my daughter, clearly defending a man who had sat there smirking while his father insulted me. "Character doesn't change with the size of a bank account," I told her quietly. "Tonight showed me who they really are." "You barely know them," she snapped. "I know enough. I've seen how Brandon talks down to waiters, how he treats anyone he thinks is beneath him. And tonight, that included me." Megan gave a sharp laugh. "You're being paranoid. And honestly, a little controlling." The word hit me harder than Eldon's smug comments. Controlling. As if wanting better for my only daughter meant trying to cage her. "I'm not trying to control you," I said carefully. "I'm trying to protect you from making a mistake that could cost you decades of unhappiness." "A mistake." Her voice rose. "My engagement is a mistake? Your engagement to him might be." Her eyes flashed. "Stop the car." "What?" "Stop the car, Dad. Right now." I pulled onto the shoulder. Before I'd even stopped, she was unbuckling her seat belt. "You don't understand anything," she said, grabbing her purse. "You don't understand Brandon. You don't understand his family. And you definitely don't understand what I need." "Sweetheart, please." "What I need," she cut me off, "is support from my father, not judgment. I need someone who trusts me to make my own choices." She pushed the door open. Cool night air rushed in, carrying the smell of exhaust and the hint of rain. "Where are you going?" I asked. "Anywhere but here." She stepped out, then leaned down to the window. "I'll call Brandon to pick me up. At least he doesn't think I'm too stupid to choose my own life." The door slammed. Her heels clicked against the pavement as she walked toward a gas station glowing under harsh fluorescent light. My phone buzzed, already her, already texting him. Already choosing him over me. I stayed there until I saw her safely inside, then pulled back onto the highway, the radio whispering under the weight of what I'd just lost. The empty passenger seat seemed to echo her absence. When I turned into my driveway in Newark, my modest two-story house felt smaller than ever. The porch light threw long shadows across the little garden where Megan and I had planted tomatoes every spring since she was 8. Just a week earlier, everything had felt so different. Back then, I'd been sitting at my kitchen table with the morning coffee steaming beside the financial section of the Times. April 22nd had started like any other Tuesday. Quiet, predictable, almost comforting. The house smelled like French roast and a hint of lavender soap Megan always used when she stayed over. At exactly 8:47 a.m., my phone rang. "Dad," she bubbled through the speaker, her voice alive with excitement. "I have news." I set down my coffee, smiling. "Good news, I hope?" "The best news. Brandon proposed." Her joy was so contagious that, for a moment, all my doubts about him vanished. She deserved this, deserved love, someone who would treasure her. "Tell me everything," I said, leaning back in my chair. "It was perfect, Dad." He took me to Central Park, right by the reservoir where we had our first date. He got down on one knee, in front of joggers and dog walkers, right there on the path. "And the ring, it's beautiful. A princess-cut diamond. It catches light like crazy." I pictured her face glowing with happiness, strangers clapping around her, and it warmed me despite the nagging worry I carried about Brandon's character. I'm so happy for you, sweetheart, I told her. There's going to be an engagement dinner next week. You'll meet his parents properly. They're wonderful people, Dad. His father built his business from nothing. You two will have so much to talk about. That's when I made the decision that set all of this in motion. Megan, before we meet them, I need to ask you for a favor. Anything. I stood, pacing to the window that looked out over my neighbor's plain front yard. I want to keep my financial situation private. Let them think I'm just a regular working man. There was silence on the line. Finally, she asked, a little confused. Why would you want that? Because I want to see who they really are. Money changes how people act, how they treat you. If they think I'm wealthy, they'll put on a performance. If they think I'm ordinary, they'll show their true colors. And if those colors are ugly, then we'll know exactly what we're dealing with. She was quiet for a long moment. Dad, isn't that kind of manipulative? It's not manipulative, it's practical. Real character shows when people believe there's nothing to gain from being kind. Now, sitting in my driveway with tonight's fight fresh in my mind, I wondered if I'd been wise, or just plain stubborn. My modest home stood quietly around me. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. Nothing fancy. In my desk drawer sat portfolio statements that told a very different story, but those numbers had never meant much compared to real life. Inside, the hallway walls carried our history. Megan at her college graduation, Megan on Christmas morning surrounded by thoughtful but inexpensive gifts, Megan laughing at something dumb I'd said, her whole face lit up with love. I climbed the stairs to my bedroom, each step heavier than the last. Tomorrow would begin what I feared might be a long silence between us. I'd asked her to help me hide my wealth, and in return, I might have lost the only thing that truly mattered. The irony was sharp. In trying to protect her from people who cared more about money than character, I had pushed her straight into their arms. Looking around at my simple house, nothing had really changed, but everything felt different. Every plain piece of furniture, every frugal choice, carried the weight of old decisions. Decisions made long before Megan was born. Long before the money that changed everything. Except the way I chose to live. The living room looked exactly the same as it had for the last 15 years. Same couch with its worn cushions, same wooden coffee table with faint rings from all the nights we'd spent reading there together. The only expensive things were the ones no one could see, the portfolio statements locked in my desk, the emergency fund that, if I wanted, could buy the whole neighborhood. I eased down into my reading chair, the one Megan had spotted at a thrift store when she was 16. Dad, this one's perfect, she'd said, running her hand across the cracked leather. It looks like it has stories to tell. And it did. Stories I'd never shared with her, like the one from back in 1995. I was 28 then, living in a cramped studio in San Francisco that barely qualified as an apartment. A Murphy bed folded down and swallowed half the floor. My so-called kitchen was just a hot plate and a mini fridge that groaned like it was dying. Every morning, I'd walk 12 blocks to the accounting office instead of spending $2 on the bus. My savings account sat at exactly $5,027. I knew the number by heart because I checked it constantly, the way some people check their heartbeat. That money was 2 years of living like a monk. Pasta, canned veggies, the same 3 shirts on rotation. The meeting that changed everything came on a Tuesday. I was walking back from lunch, just a bagel from the day-old bin, when 2 kids stopped me outside the coffee shop where I sometimes splurged on one small cup. "Excuse me," the taller one asked, "are you an accountant?" They looked barely old enough to vote. The shorter one clutched a beat-up laptop like it was the only thing keeping him afloat. Their energy was impossible to ignore. "I work in accounting," I said carefully. "We need someone to look at our numbers," the tall one pressed. "Someone smart. Someone who understands money." We ended up in my building's lobby with terrible coffee, them laying out their idea, a software platform that would change how people shared information. The internet back then was dial-up tones and clunky websites. Their plan sounded both impossible and inevitable. "We just need a little to get started," the shorter one said, his hands shaking. 5,000 would let us rent an office, buy equipment, maybe eat something better than ramen. 5,000. My entire safety net. Losing it would have meant packing up and heading back to Ohio, moving into my parents' basement, admitting I'd failed. I should have said no. But instead I started asking questions about market research, projections, competition. And they had answers. Good ones. What struck me most wasn't their numbers, it was the hunger in their eyes. Not hunger for luxury, but hunger to build something real. If I invest, I said slowly, I want 10% equity. Deal. No hesitation, no lawyer. Just a handshake in a lobby that smelled like worn carpet and broken dreams. 6 months later, they signed their first big client. 18 months after that, a tech giant bought them out for $42 million. My $5,000 gamble turned into $4.2 million overnight. Now, sitting in my same old living room, I remembered the phone call that changed my life. And I remembered the lesson that came with it, that money is just a tool, never the destination. I'd seen what sudden wealth did to people. Lottery winners, kids with inherited trust funds, clients I used to advise at the firm. Money doesn't create character, it only reveals it. That's why I kept my life simple. That's why I raised Megan to believe in hard work over wealth, character over capital. And that's why I'd asked her to hide my finances from the Whitakers. On the end table sat a photograph of Megan on her college graduation day, grinning wide beside me in front of a little family restaurant where we'd celebrated. She never knew her tuition had been covered by dividends from tech stocks. She never knew her father could have bought her anything she wanted. And now, staring at that picture, I realized that tomorrow I'd have to decide whether holding on to that philosophy, living modestly, hiding wealth, was worth the risk of losing my daughter forever. The morning didn't bring clarity. I woke up hoping last night had just been a bad dream. That Megan hadn't walked away from me, hadn't chosen Brandon in some gas station parking lot. But my phone told the truth. No missed calls, no texts, nothing to suggest the world had reset overnight. Day one felt bearable. She just needed space, I told myself. I stuck to my routines. Coffee at 6:30, newspaper at 7, market reports by 8. Each time my phone buzzed, hope spiked. But it was never her, just emails about portfolios that seemed meaningless now. By day 3, I left careful voicemails. Hi, sweetheart. It's Dad. Just wanted to say I love you. Call when you're ready. Short. Respectful. Not pushy. By day 7, my messages grew longer. Megan, I've been thinking about our conversation. Maybe I could have said things differently. You know I only want you to be happy, right? That's all I've ever wanted. Week 2, I discovered gardening. Megan had always loved helping me in the vegetable patch. We'd planted tomatoes together every spring since she was 8. Now I worked the soil alone, pulling weeds that never seemed to stop coming. The tomato seedlings sat in their plastic containers, waiting. Too late to plant them now without her. The tradition felt broken, like trying to clap with one hand. By week 3, my loneliness turned into busy work. I organized 20 years of photographs, hundreds of snapshots of Megan at every age. Birthday parties, school plays, her graduation day. In every picture she looked at me with pure trust. When had that changed? My voicemails became emotional. I keep thinking about when you were 12 and broke Mrs. Peterson's window with that baseball. You were so scared to tell me. But when you did, we went together, we apologized, and we paid for the repairs. Remember what I told you. That mistakes don't define us, how we handle them does. I think I made a mistake with Brandon. Can we figure out how to handle it, together? But the wedding invitation never came. Day 25, I drove past her apartment building. Not to stalk, just to remind myself she was real. Her car sat in its usual spot. It didn't confirm anything except geography. Day 28 brought panic. I thought about wedding shops, caterers, photographers, all the things that needed final decisions. Was I excluded entirely? Would my only child marry a man I didn't trust without me there to witness it? Megan, it's Dad again, I said into her voicemail. I know I've called a lot this week. Tomorrow's June 1st. I assume that's still your wedding day. I'll understand if you don't want me there, but I need to know. Please, just tell me you're okay. My voice cracked at the end. 30 days of silence had worn me down like water carving stone. On day 30, I made dinner for one. Simple pasta, the kind Megan and I used to make on Sunday nights. The table felt enormous with only one place set. The empty chair across from me was a quiet, unshakable reminder of what I'd lost to my own stubborn principle. It was 6:45 p.m. Tomorrow, in some fancy corner of the Hamptons, my daughter would marry Brandon Whitaker. And I'd probably see it the way a stranger would, through other people's social media posts. If they even bothered to include me at all. I sat at the table, twirling pasta around my fork without appetite. Outside, spring was already slipping into summer. Life kept moving forward, whether I was ready to or not. Then the phone rang. My fork clattered against the plate. After 30 days of silence, unexpected calls could only mean bad news. Emergencies. Accidents. The kind of thing every parent dreads. But it was Megan's face glowing on the screen. My hands shook as I swiped to answer. Hello, Dad. Her voice was softer than I remembered, a little shaky. Hi, I said. Hi. I jumped up so fast, the chair scraped against the floor. Are you okay? Is everything? I'm fine, she said quickly. I'm calling because tomorrow is. She paused. I could hear traffic behind her, and Brandon's muffled voice somewhere off to the side. The wedding is tomorrow. I know. The words came out rough. I cleared my throat. I wasn't sure if I wanted you there, she said. Relief hit me like a punch to the chest. My legs wobbled. I leaned against the wall just to stay steady. Thank you, I whispered. But there are conditions. Of course there were. Nothing was simple anymore. I'm listening. You can't say anything negative about Brandon. No faces, no comments, none of those little things you do when you disapprove. What things? You know what things. The eyebrow thing. The way you pressed your lips together at dinner. Without thinking, I touched my eyebrow. Promise me, Dad. This is my wedding. It has to be perfect. Perfect, for her. I could manage that, or at least fake it. I promise. No comments. No looks. I'll be the model father of the bride. Her exhale came through the line, long and shaky. Good. The ceremony starts at 4. Grand Pavilion, Hamptons. I'll text you the address. Cocktails at 5, dinner at 7. What should I wear? Navy suit. Nothing too formal. The Whitakers already think. She stopped herself. They think what? Nothing. Navy suit is fine. We both knew she'd almost said it, that they thought I couldn't afford better. Maybe she was right. From their perspective, probably true. Megan, about that night in the car. Dad, don't. Let's just start fresh tomorrow. Okay. Clean slate, I said. Clean slate, she agreed. As if 30 days of silence could be wiped away with 2 words. But I'd take what she offered. I love you, sweetheart. I love you too, Dad. I'll see you tomorrow. The line went dead. I stared at the phone for a long moment, hardly believing it had really happened. 30 days of agony, ended by a 5-minute call that changed everything. My dinner sat untouched. Instead, I climbed the stairs to my bedroom and opened the closet. The navy suit hung there, pressed and ready, the same one I'd worn to that humiliating dinner. Tomorrow, it would serve a different purpose. Tomorrow, I'd walk my daughter down the aisle to marry a man I didn't trust. I'd smile, shake hands, pretend everything was perfect while watching her tie herself to a family that measured worth in dollars. But I'd be there. And after 30 days of wondering if I'd lost her forever, Maybe being there would be enough. Morning light streamed through my window at 6:30, the same time I'd woken for 30 years. But today felt different. Today, I'd see my daughter again. My navy suit hung on the closet door, waiting. My best, but not too much. Carefully chosen. The conservative tie. Polished black shoes. Everything Megan had asked for. Nothing the Whitakers could twist into criticism about trying too hard. Breakfast was more math than appetite. My blood sugar monitor showed steady numbers, but stress could send them sideways fast. I took my morning insulin, measured out steel-cut oats like I was building an equation, double-checked my meter. No way was I letting a diabetic emergency ruin my daughter's wedding. The forecast promised perfection, 72 degrees, light breeze, 0 chance of rain. Exactly the kind of day Megan used to imagine as a little girl, when she staged elaborate backyard weddings for her dolls. Coffee steadied me. For once, I'd managed 3 hours of actual sleep, the first real rest in weeks. Hope, it turned out, could be stronger than any sedative. By 8 o'clock I was already dressed, staring at my reflection. Clean shave, neat grooming, cologne Megan had given me last Christmas. Modest, respectable, exactly the working man the Whitakers expected to see. "You can do this," I told the mirror. No comments. No faces. No disapproval. Perfect behavior. The gift had taken me days to decide on. Too expensive would raise questions. Too cheap would embarrass Megan. In the end, I chose a crystal vase from the little shop downtown. $68, wrapped beautifully in white ribbon with a card that read, "Wishing you joy, love, and understanding in your marriage." Understanding. If only they knew how much I already understood about who they really were. My phone buzzed with texts. Neighbors, old friends, people who'd watched Megan grow up in this house. They wished her well, completely unaware that today might be the last time I ever walked her down an aisle. The Hamptons were a 2-hour drive on a Saturday. Ceremony at 4 meant I'd leave by noon, build in time for traffic, parking, photographs. I ran my checklist again, insulin pen in my jacket, glucose tablets in my pocket, gift receipt in my wallet, phone fully charged. Everything a responsible father might need. I glanced around my modest home one last time. If today went badly, if I couldn't live up to Megan's request for perfection, this could be my last peaceful morning here. Another month of silence might follow. Or worse. But today also carried a chance. Maybe Brandon would surprise me. Maybe joy would soften the arrogance I'd seen at that dinner. Maybe Megan could find happiness in spite of my doubts. I picked up the wrapped vase and my car keys. Time to find out which version of today would unfold. The Toyota started on the first turn, steady as always. I adjusted the rearview mirror, checked my tie one last time, and pulled out of the driveway. The Hamptons waited. And so did everything else. The grand pavilion rose out of manicured lawns like something out of a glossy magazine. Bentleys and Mercedes circled the drive, chrome flashing in the sunlight. My Toyota looked like a delivery truck that had taken a wrong turn among thoroughbreds. A valet stepped toward me, his surprise slipping through before the polished smile landed. "Sir, are you here for the Whitaker-Harrington wedding?" "I'm the bride's father," I said. His expression softened into something like sympathy. "Of course, sir. Right this way." Inside, the entry hall sparkled, crystal chandeliers worth more than houses, flowers stacked like trees, every petal placed with surgical precision. The air was thick with perfume and lilies so perfect they could only have been imported. "Thomas." Priscilla's voice cut across the marble foyer like a foghorn. "Everyone, this is Megan's father." 20 sets of eyes turned at once, dressed in silk and suits that probably cost more than my car. Their glances worked me over. Modest suit, department store shoes, gift box that obviously didn't come from Tiffany. Their smiles were polite, practiced, the kind reserved for charity cases. "How wonderful that you could make it," Priscilla said. Eldon appeared at her side. "I know the drive was long. From where is it you live again?" "Newark, isn't it? Quite a distance in that little car of yours." A photographer hovered nearby, camera gear worth more than a year of tuition. Family photos in 5, he announced. Immediate family only, Priscilla clarified quickly. Thomas, perhaps you could wait over there. Over there was a corner beside the coat rack, away from anyone that mattered. From there, I watched the Whitakers pose with Megan, their outfits coordinated like a magazine spread. Brandon's groomsmen joined in, Harvard ties, easy laughs, the kind of confidence that comes with inheritance. A waiter swept by with champagne on a silver tray. Krug Klaus du Mesnil, he announced proudly. My goodness, someone gasped. $300 a bottle. Only the best for our son's wedding, Eldon boomed, making sure the whole room heard. Then he glanced at me. Of course, not everyone appreciates fine champagne. The ceremony seating delivered another insult. Front rows sparkled with Whitaker business partners and society friends. I was ushered back to row 7, behind distant relatives and dates no one remembered inviting, the father of the bride tucked away like an afterthought. Beautiful ceremony spot, I murmured to the woman beside me. Oh yes, she whispered back. $50,000 just to rent the venue. Thankfully the Whitakers could manage it. The bride's family, well, she stopped herself, has very modest means. I finished for her. Yes, I've heard that too. Later, Brandon's best man passed around cigars. Cuban, he bragged, saved for occasions like this. The humidor skipped my row entirely. During cocktail hour, I caught Megan for a fleeting moment. She looked radiant, silk dress, pearls at her throat, eyes glowing beneath careful makeup. You look beautiful, sweetheart. Thank you for coming, Dad. I know this isn't easy. It's your day. That's what matters. She squeezed my hand. Urban's family means well. They're just particular about traditions. Particular. Like excluding me from family photos, or seating me with strangers. Still, I forced a smile. I'm fine. Go enjoy your reception. Dinner began like theater, waiters marching out in perfect formation, plates arranged like art exhibits. 5 courses, each more elaborate than most entrees. The wine pairings alone probably cost more than I spent on groceries in a month. From my distant table, I watched the head table buzzing with conversation. Brandon gestured broadly, telling stories that sent his groomsmen into laughter. Every so often, his eyes slid toward me, that same smirk from our first meeting curling at the corner of his mouth. Dessert arrived like a spectacle. A 5-tier wedding cake rose in the center, surrounded by chocolate sculptures and delicate pastries arranged like jewelry. Guests swarmed with phones raised, snapping every angle like tourists at a museum. I approached slowly, careful not to stand too close, careful to play the role of the outsider. A chocolate fountain gurgled nearby, gold leaf pastries shimmered under spotlights. Everything was designed to dazzle. Nothing was designed for someone with diabetes. A waiter noticed my hesitation. Can I help you select something, sir? Do you have any sugar-free options? I'm diabetic. Of course. We have fresh fruit, a sugar-free chocolate mousse, and almond cookies made with stevia. A simple request. A medical necessity. Nothing shameful about managing my health responsibly. That sounds perfect, I said. The fruit, please. Behind me, the conversations rolled on, vacation homes, stock portfolios, the usual rich people chatter. All things I could afford, but had no interest in flaunting. What's that about diabetic options? Brandon's voice cut across the room, sharp as glass. He was weaving slightly as he approached, champagne clearly taking its toll. I was just asking about sugar-free, I said. Sugar-free. His laugh came out too loud, drawing every nearby gaze. Let me guess. Can't afford proper medical care either. Conversations faltered. Heads turned. The air thickened, hungry for drama. I manage my condition just fine, I answered. Of course you do, he said, louder now, performing for the crowd. Free clinic visits, discount meds. But hey, at least you made it to the wedding, right? Even if you can't afford a real dessert. Brandon. Megan's voice sliced in from behind us. He didn't even glance at her. Just helping your dad here navigate his options, he said with that smirk I'd come to hate. Turns out beggars really can be choosers when it comes to wedding cake. Beggars. The word landed like a curse. The room went silent, 50 guests holding their breath, waiters frozen in place. Even the chocolate fountain seemed to stop gurgling. That's enough, Megan snapped. Is it? Brandon stepped closer, alcohol making him bold, cruel, honest. Because I'm done pretending this is fine. Done watching your deadbeat father drag down our family. He's not embarrassing anyone, Megan shot back. Look at him. Brandon's arm swung toward me, toward my modest suit, my steady stance, my very presence in their palace of excess. Look at this pathetic situation. Then his hands moved, fast, sloppy, drunk, but deliberate. My face slammed into the wedding cake with a sound like silk tearing. Frosting filled my eyes, my nose, my mouth. 5 tiers of sugar sculpture collapsed around me. Vanilla and chocolate mixed with shock and humiliation. The room erupted. Gasps, screams, nervous laughter. Phones flashed like fireworks. A chair screeched against the marble as someone scrambled for a better view. I straightened slowly, cake dripping from my hair, frosting sliding down my cheeks. The taste was actually good. Real butter, expensive vanilla. The kind of cake I could easily afford, but never would. Through the sugary mess, I saw the faces. Shocked, amused, disgusted, and Megan, horrified. What have you done? She whispered. Brandon stood grinning, proud of himself, blind to the fact that he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life. The crack of Megan's palm against his face echoed through the hall like a gunshot. Red bloomed across his cheek as his smirk shattered. How dare you? Her voice rang across the marble, reaching every corner of the room. How dare you lay a hand on my father? I kept wiping buttercream from my eyes, trying to process what had just happened, tasting expensive sugar while the world tilted. Guests closed in, phones raised, filming what was already becoming the scandal of the season. Megan, calm down, Brandon stammered, clutching his cheek. It was just what? She cut him off. Just assault? Just humiliating the man who raised me while you laughed. Enough. The word boomed across the chaos like a gavel. Heads turned as Charles Beaumont rose from his seat at table 12, silver hair catching the chandelier light. At 65, he didn't need to shout. His presence alone silenced the room. Ladies and gentlemen, Charles began, his voice carrying that calm authority only years in boardrooms can forge. Allow me to introduce Thomas Harrington. A ripple of murmurs swept through the guests. Some of you may recognize him as the founding investor in Technova Industries. I froze, frosting still clinging to my jacket. Thomas, Charles continued, locking eyes with me, is one of America's most successful private investors. His portfolio includes early stakes in companies that reshaped the digital world. His current net worth, he paused, letting the silence stretch, well north of $1 billion. The room erupted. Whispers turned into gasps. People twisted in their seats, staring at me, then at Brandon, whose face had drained to a sickly gray. That's Thomas Harrington, someone breathed near table 8. The Technova Harrington, another said. I knew he looked familiar. His fund's been legendary in Silicon Valley for decades, added a third. Wait, a man called from across the room. He's the one who turned $5,000 into $4 million in 2 years, that Thomas Harrington. I straightened my frosting-stained jacket and gave Charles the faintest nod. Around us, recognition spread like fire through dry grass. The Whitakers' supposed fortune, $3 million, maybe, looked like pocket change in comparison. Eldon and Priscilla stood behind their son, faces shifting through disbelief, recognition, then horror. But he drives a Toyota, Priscilla whispered. He lives in Newark, Eldon muttered, stunned. Charles smiled thinly. Exactly. Because Thomas understands something your family clearly doesn't. Money doesn't define character. Character defines how you treat people, no matter what you think their financial status is. Guests pressed closer, drawn like moths. Some looked embarrassed for laughing earlier. Others practically vibrated with excitement, thrilled to be witnessing the social implosion of the season. Brandon opened his mouth a few times, no sound coming out, like a fish flopping on marble floors. I brushed the last of the cake crumbs from my sleeves and let the silence hang, watching faces that had ignored me earlier now straining forward with respect, even awe. The Whitakers finally scrambled into action, social survival instincts kicking in. Eldon reached me first. Thomas, please. This is all a terrible misunderstanding. I tilted my head. Misunderstanding? Your son just shoved my face into a wedding cake in front of 200 witnesses. Which part of that did I get wrong? Brandon stumbled forward, drunk and desperate. Mr. Harrington, sir, I didn't know. I mean, if I'd realized. Realized what? My voice was quiet, but it carried. That I was wealthy. So what, you're saying assault is fine if the victim is poor? No, that's not. I didn't mean. Brandon's words twisted around his tongue, panic dripping from every syllable. Sweat shone on his forehead despite the air conditioning. Priscilla appeared at his side, her damage control smile plastered on. Thomas, surely we can put this behind us. Family disagreements happen at weddings. Emotions run high. I met her eyes, steady. Family disagreements, I repeated softly, as frosting dried on my collar. I repeated her words like they were from a foreign language. Family disagreements. Is that what you call a month of humiliation? Being cut out of photographs? Your son shoving my face into a cake. We apologize, Eldon jumped in quickly, voice shifting into his boardroom tone. Completely, unreservedly. Let's start fresh, shall we? A clean slate. The same words Megan had used when she called me. But in his mouth, they carried no love, only calculation. Start fresh, I echoed. Now that you know I have money. Your financial status has nothing to do with this, Priscilla protested, her voice a pitch too high. Charles Beaumont barked a laugh from nearby. Madam, his treatment had everything to do with money. You mocked him when you thought he was poor. Now you grovel because you've realized he's rich. That's not true, Brandon said desperately. I would have treated him the same either way. Really? I asked softly. The same way you treated the waiters tonight? The valet? The housekeepers? Because I watched. His mouth opened and closed, soundless. Your character was revealed perfectly tonight, I continued. Not by what you did to me, but by how you behaved when you thought there'd be no consequences. Please. Eldon tried again, almost pleading now. Business aside, personal aside, we're family. We need to work together. Family. The word tasted bitter. I've watched you teach your son that money decides human worth. That poverty justifies cruelty. That wealth excuses everything. I brushed one last smear of frosting from my collar. You want a fresh start? Fine. Here's mine. I'm leaving. You can't just walk away. Priscilla's voice cracked. Think about Megan. Think about what we could accomplish together. The business opportunities. Business opportunities, I repeated, shaking my head. Even now, with their social world collapsing, they were calculating profit margins. I am thinking about Megan, I said. I'm thinking she deserves better than a family that measures love in dollars. As I turned toward the doors, Brandon grabbed my sleeve. Wait. I can change. I can be better. I looked down at his hand, then back at him. You're 30 years old. This is who you are. The crowd parted. I walked through it as whispers chased me, the Whitakers' frantic voices rising behind me. None of it mattered. They had already revealed themselves when they thought it didn't count. Outside, evening air washed over me like absolution. Behind me, the muffled noise of social catastrophe rattled against the grand pavilion's walls. Ahead, my modest Toyota waited, steady, honest, mine. Then I heard footsteps pounding on marble, then concrete. "Dad, wait." I turned. Megan was running, silk dress in her hands, hair undone, makeup streaked with tears I hadn't seen before. "Sweetheart," I said softly, "you should go back inside. It's your wedding." "No," she stopped in front of me, chest rising, dress dragging across asphalt. "It's not. Not anymore." We stood in the golden light of early evening, father and daughter, separated by months of silence and misunderstanding. Her gown probably cost more than a car. My suit was stained with frosting that probably cost more than most dinners. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "You were right. About everything. About Brandon, about his family, about what money does to people." "I'm sorry too," I said. "I should have told you the truth from the beginning." "Why didn't you?" I turned toward the ocean, its horizon stretching beyond the pavilion's manicured gardens. The answer pressed at my chest, heavier than all the silence between us. "Because I wanted you to choose someone who loved you for you, not for what I have," I told her quietly. "I wanted your relationships to be real, like ours has always been." The words hung there, heavy, a bridge between us I wasn't sure either of us could cross. "Our relationship is real," I said finally. "It survived wealth, poverty, conflict, silence. It survived tonight." Megan stepped closer, her hand slipping into mine. "I spent 2 months furious with you for not trusting my judgment. But you knew. You saw what I couldn't." "I saw what I was afraid to see," I admitted. "Sometimes being right doesn't feel like winning." She gave a shaky laugh that turned into a sob. "I just walked out of my own wedding reception to chase my father across a parking lot in a $20,000 dress." $20,000. I raised an eyebrow. For that much, it should have come with better running shoes. Her laugh this time was real. "Take me home, Dad." "What about your reception? Your guests? What about them? Let Brandon explain to his family why the bride left. Let them deal with their own disaster." I looked at my daughter, dressed in silk that cost more than some cars, standing beside my 10-year-old Toyota. The symbolism wasn't lost on either of us. "You sure?" I asked. "I've never been more sure of anything." I opened the passenger door. She gathered $20,000 worth of fabric into the modest seat, and I closed it gently behind her. As I rounded the car, guests began spilling from the pavilion, glancing around, searching for the missing bride. "Where to?" I asked as the engine hummed to life. "Home," she said simply. "Your place. Our place." The drive back to Newark wound through familiar streets, past the places where I'd raised her, where we'd built a life measured by values instead of valuations. The late-day sun painted everything gold, making even modest neighborhoods shine. "I get it now," Megan said as we crossed the bridge toward home. "Why you live the way you do. Why you never flaunted the money." "Because money's just a tool," I said. "Not an identity. Not a scoreboard. Just a tool for building the life you actually want." "And what life do you want?" she asked softly. I pulled into the driveway, looking at the little house where I'd raised her to be strong, independent, and kind. "This one," I said. "Exactly this one." We sat for a moment, watching the sun slip lower over the neighborhood. Simple houses, small lawns, people who valued character over capital. "Come on," I said finally. "Let's go inside. I'll put on a pot of coffee, and we'll figure out what comes next, together." And side by side, we walked toward the front door of the little house that had always been rich in everything that mattered.